So I saw something the other day that got my attention. On the back of this is Knave's second edition. There is a line that says that this book is a love letter to the magic that is old school adventure gaming. That got me wondering, what is Dungeons and Dragons? Pathfinder, any of it? I mean, I think the slogan, I don't know if it started with 5th edition, was the world's greatest role playing game. And if you ask most people that play it, they would say it's a role playing game. But was it always that? I'm not sure. I know D&D started off as an offshoot of the war gaming community. They wanted something that was smaller. And from the story I heard, it was to play through the adventures of the Mines of Moria in Lord of the Rings. So it started off, like I said, as an offshoot of war games. And I think it's only been more of a recent thing where it's been heavily focused on the role playing aspect. I mean, if you ask anybody, or not anybody, people who keep up with a hobby, they'll tell you there's three main pillars that D&D focuses on: this adventure or exploration, combat, and role playing. And I think with things like the popularity of Critical Role and several of the other streaming D&D campaigns, that people have started to think of it more as a role-playing game and only a role-playing game, and they kind of leave off that there's two other really important things that make it up. I mean, in some games you don't even have exploration at all. We just hand wave it. You got from point A to point B, and you're there, and that's fine. I do that a lot, and sometimes I think that's a discredit to what the game was or what the game can be. I think there's a lot of people that have this idea that they show up, they talk in a funny voice, and they act just like their character would act, to the detriment of what's going on in the game, because it is still a game. It's not just a play you're playing through. I've seen players, they go, well, my character would do this, and that's a good way to think about it, but at the same time, you're still a player playing a game. And if you act like it's not a game that you're trying to win, and I know you can't technically win D&D, but you can survive it. If you're not trying to play better and you're just making bad choices, well, I'm a first level fill in the blank, and a first level fill in the blank wouldn't know that he shouldn't hit a dragon on the nose. That's wrong. The character would know that, and the player definitely would know that. So there's been this large, I think, disconnect between what the characters know and what the players know. And in some of these books, like Knave that I just showed you, and a few other ones, they even call out that there is player information, player learning. The player gains experience as they go through it, they get better. So yes, you should be able to role play as a character, but that doesn't mean you have to be an actor. It means you have to fill a role in the game. So is it an adventure game? Yes, I think it is. And I think in the past decade or so, it's become more of a play acting game than it is an adventure game. You can do hex crawls. Hex crawls are not for everyone. I don't really run hex crawls a lot. My players don't like them, but you have to do resource management, and you have to do watches, and you have to go and find your own things. And rather than just the town has everything you need, I get to go to sleep and get all my stuff back. And adventure resource managing and hex crawling, it's a style of game, but it still falls under an adventure game. And for players that play that style, I don't think they spend as much time getting into character, because that's not what they're there for. They're there to experience a world and interact with it, rather than be a living being in the world and that's all they know. And there's nothing wrong with people who want to play a very immersive, I think like my character does, but there is something wrong if you do that to the detriment of the other pillars of combat and exploration, where it just becomes, I'm a character in the show. It's not a game anymore at that point. So I get back to the question, is Dungeons and Dragons a role-playing game or is it an adventure game? And I think it used to be an adventure game. It's now turned into a role-playing game, because I'm not sure when that term got created. I don't know if it was with the video games when they took off, or if it's been around longer now. I'm not certain. But I think it's kind of morphed into adventure first, role play second, to role play first, adventure second. And I think it would be better if we kind of balanced it a little more. There's like a pendulum, and I think it's going to swing back and forth. And it's getting to the point where I think so many people are so role play heavy that it's not a game, and eventually they're going to get tired of it. Or some people are just going to swing in the other direction to where it becomes so gamified that this neglecting the role play aspect, and it's probably going to swing back and forth decade to decade. At least that's what I think is going to happen. But I think somewhere in the middle, where you acknowledge you're playing a game, you acknowledge it. Yes, your character has some information, but you as a player, you do too. And you should let that come out. Not that you're going to metagame, and I'm going to make a video about metagaming because I don't think it's as bad or as terrible as people make it out to be, at least in certain scenarios. But I'm going to talk about that, and I plan on making a video on player agency because I have pretty strong opinions on that as well. So yeah, next time you sit down to either prep your game or to play, it's like, ask yourself, it's like, are you doing this as a game or are you doing it just to be an actor? Because I have seen players, they go way too far in one direction and it just becomes a show they're playing in. So just remember, it started off as a war game, adventure game, and while things develop and evolve and change, it still should have its roots in that. So let's see if we can change how we're thinking about the game and make it more of a, not competitive, but immersive to all three pillars of Dungeons & Dragons: exploration, combat, and role-playing.